All right. Welcome, everybody, to Standing for Truth. My name is Donnie Badinsky, and I am your host and moderator for tonight's common descent clash between Chen and Dr. Dino. This is their round three endgame debate, and I'm sure it's going to be a round three to remember. Gentlemen, before we get into the debate itself, and our opening statements, let us get acquainted, break the ice a little bit. I am looking forward to an engaging, thought provoking, professional, and of course, respectful exchange on the topic of common descent. Chen, let's start with you. Been a little while since you've been here. If I
Yes,
remember correctly, the last time you were here was for your debate with T Rock.
T-Rock.
I
That's
think it
right.
was on
Yes,
dinosaurs. It was a good debate. It was a comprehensive debate on the topic. So, Ian, how have you
I
been
did
since
enjoy it.
then? Yeah.
Just checking. You can hear me okay? Everyone can hear me?
Yes, you're coming in good.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Yeah. So look, my name is Ian. And I didn't really have much of an opening, except to kind of say that it is a third debate with Kent. I think it's an annual. This is going to be an annual thing. If we do a fourth one, I don't know, but it's been an annual occurrence so far. We had our first one back in, I think 2022. We had one last year, and obviously this is our third one. And I do have to say, I think Donnie, you've told me that each of the debates that Ken and I have had has been, getting stronger and stronger. And I think the second one, Ken, that we had last year was what is one of Donnie's top viewed debates. So I'm hoping that this third one is going to smash that. And if anything, I hope we just have fun. Even though Ken and I will disagree and probably disagree very strongly, at least we're going to have fun about it. So that will be good. So that look, I don't have much of an introduction or an opening, but that's it for me.
All right, Ian, appreciate that. Yes, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Your first two rounds, people enjoyed, highly viewed, and definitely very engaging debate. So, round three, I'm sure, should be very good. I'm excited for this. Common descent, good topic. And okay, Kent, great to have you back as well. Kent, tell us, how have you been? Last time you were here was for our open mic challenge last week. Lots of fun as always. So, Kent, how have you been since then? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. Good to be on here again. My name's Kent Hovind. I've been a Baptist preacher almost 51 years now. Been a child of God for almost 56 years. February will be my birthday into God's family when I got born again, became a child of God. I believe the Bible is true. I believe evolution is the dumbest and most dangerous religion, and it's nothing but a religion. You have to believe in evolution. There's no scientific evidence for evolution. I think it's the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of the planet. There's no reason to believe you're related to a banana and a potato and an earthworm. If you wish to believe that, that's fine, but they shouldn't call it science. I did teach high school science and math 15 years. This will be debate number 370 for me tonight. And thank you, Ian, for coming back. So I will defend the position that the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. God said, I'm hearing something there. Oh, uh, God said they'll always bring forth after their kind. Humans always make baby humans. There are simply no exceptions. If you wish to believe something other than that, you can believe all you want. But my position is that's not science. They make these crazy family trees and put them in our textbooks and say, oh, yeah, look at this, boys and girls, humans related to, spinach. Drawing a line on paper is not evident. It's not scientific evidence. There's no reason to say that humans are related to ostriches. I mean, if you wish to believe that, that's fine. But nobody's ever seen an ostrich produce a non-ostrich. It's simply not science. So I admit the Bible I believe God created the world. I didn't see it. I can't prove it scientifically. The only other alternative is nobody created the world, and they can't prove that scientifically either. So my position is both creation and evolution are religious. Why are we all paying for one religion to be taught? That should be stopped. Okay.
All right, Kent, thank you for that introduction. Appreciate the intros from the both of you, Ian and Kent. So let's go
Yep.
over the format a little bit. What we're going to be doing is giving each debater tonight, Ian and Kent, 10 minutes to set the foundation for what's going to be discussed. They can use the 10 minutes however they'd like to engage the topic. The exact question we're interacting with tonight is this: does common descent explain the origin of species? And so Chen takes the affirmative, Kent takes the negative. Therefore, Ian, we are going to hand it over to you,
Mhm.
and you have 10 minutes to help us set the foundation for tonight. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me share some slides. How do I do this?
As you're sharing screen, I'll let
Share
the
screen.
audience know as people come into the live chat, we are going to be having an audience Q&A. That'll be once we're done with the main portion of the debate after the closing statement. So please, if you got a question, do your best to tag me at Donnie or at Standing for Truth and let me know who the question's for, Ian or Kent. We'll have some fun with those. Ian, I see your slides up now. Looks like you're good to go.
Okay, great.
Common descent clash.
Yes, yes. So look, I think I put a couple of pictures here online on screens. This hopefully kind of helps articulate both mine and Kent's position. The one on the left there is obviously what evolution says, and that we all share a common descent, right down to what we call Luca, or last universal common ancestor. And the kind of diagram on the right is essentially, I mean, it may not be 100% accurate, but it's essentially what Kent believes, that there are certain classes, kinds, whatever you want to call it, of animals. They're all specially created, and none of them are actually sharing common ancestry between them. So this is just a kind of visual diagram as to what both Kent and I believe and how different they are. Okay, the slides coming through. Okay, Donnie. Yep.
Yes, they look good, Ian.
Yes.
Yeah, they look
Yes.
good.
Thank you, Donnie. All right. So this isn't my wife. I'm sorry. Did I say that right? I always like to start with a Kent joke, kind of a bit of a homage to Kent, but this isn't my wife. This is a picture of my wife. So look, I do want to say that, Ken, I accept your 6 stages of evolution. I have, in our previous 2 debates, have always accepted this. I want to kind of bring people's attention to our second debate, which was done last year. And that is when I showed evidence, or when I got Ken to agree that stellar parallax was a valid methodology to measure the distance of stars, and then proceeded to show him that using satellites, we can measure stars out to 30,000 light years away. In other words, the universe is at least 30,000 years old. Kent, you whined like a baby and you ran, and you complained that I wasn't bringing evidence of biological evolution. So, Ken, in this debate, I'll stick to biological evidence, but please stop saying atheists never touch your 4 stages of evolution when you're the one that ran away last year. Okay, so that's as a comment that I wanted to kind of say to the audience here. I can talk about any of Kent's stages, but I will focus on the biological evidence today. And Kent, don't please stop saying that atheists never touch it, because I did and I tried and you ran away. I'll pause there in case, because I know Kent probably has stuff he wants to say about this. But Ken, you can jump in at any time. You can feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind. Okay, so all right, what I'll do is I'll kind of stop sharing because I don't really need to show the slides for the next part, and then I'll need to come back to my slides later. So let me kind of stop sharing. Is that the stop sharing button? That works. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, you're good.
So Kent, before I start, I think I want to make sure that we are using common terminology here and that we understand each other's positions, or at least the audience understands each other's positions. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. These questions are nothing new, Kent. Um, and you have confirmed this multiple times in your 370 odd debates. Well, that's quite a lot of debates, Kent, I have to say. So you have confirmed this many times throughout your debates in the past. So let me start with a couple questions to you, Kent. Can we assume that when you quote from the Bible, for example, when we are going into a discussion onto what a kind is, you will be quoting from the King James Version of the Bible? Is that something that I can assume? Okay, I think you might be on mute, but I see you nod your head, so that's great. Okay. And is it, in your opinion, that the reason why you use the King James Version, because I can use several different versions when to kind of help my case as well, but is it in your opinion that the reason you use the King James Version is that it is the most accurate or the perfect word of God, and that there are no contradictions, and if there are any contradictions in other Bible versions, those Bible versions are incorrect, but the King James Version is the correct version? Can I assume that?
This is correct, but you're doing the same thing you did last year. You're going to spend an hour not getting to the topic. Where's the evidence for common descent? I asked you 40 times, and
Yep.
here you are talking about King James. Yes, I believe King James Bible is correct.
Yep. And
Where's
it's
the evidence for
important because it's important I highlight this, Ken, because I know that you will be talking about what a kind is, and I know that you'll be referring to the King James Version. And the reason why, and it'll become evident later, is because when I look at different parts or different versions of the Bible, it will say something slightly different. And I just want to make sure that we are aligned and that I am quoting from the Bible that you're quoting from. That's why this is important. I want the audience to kind of understand that as well. Okay, so let's delve a little bit deeper into kinds, and we're going to get there very soon, Ken. So in the past, Ken, you have given a definition of kinds. You have said that according to the Bible, if you bring forth, so for example, a dog gives birth or a dog brings forth a dog, but it does not bring forth a cow. So therefore, because the Bible says bring forth, a dog and a cow are two different kinds because a dog cannot bring forth a cow, but a dog can bring forth another dog. So a dog kind and a cow kind. Is that correct? If I articulate that correctly?
That is mostly correct. That is a leading question, though. We'll get into much more detail later, but go ahead. Yeah, cows always
Okay.
have baby cows.
Okay, and I agree with that. All right. So, but I will also make a small allowance for you because I know maybe some. I have the beauty is you've done 370 debates, and I have seen a fair few of them. So I'll make a small allowance. So today, a dog and a fox cannot bring forth. But what I will grant you is that if you look at a dog and a fox, they are so similar, and possibly in the past they used to be able to bring forth. So what I will grant you is because of its similarity, and they are highly similar, that a dog and a fox are probably the dog kind, even though today it doesn't meet the definition of bring forth. So will you agree with that kind of concession? I've given you that concession, and I've said because they visually look almost exactly the same, a dog and a fox can be called the dog kind, even though today a dog and a fox cannot bring forth. Are you okay with that?
Correct. The Bible definition of they bring forth was in the original creation, they could bring
Yep.
forth. They may have diversified where they now cannot, like Great Dane and Chihuahua cannot. That's still the
Okay,
same
so
kind. Okay.
so there is a level. So there's a level of similarity, and I'll grant you where at least it's obvious. It's probably, we could talk about how obvious a dog and a bear or whatever is later on, but a dog and a fox is so similar. I'll grant you that they're probably from the same kind. So I'm glad we kind of agree there. Okay. And can I also assume that whilst the Bible has parts of it that are allegorical or potentially poetic, that when it comes to Genesis, that should be read literally. So, for example, and I'm referring to, let's say, your debate that you had with Hugh Ross. For example, when the Bible in the King James Version says God created in 6 days, it literally means 6 24-hour days and not some longer unspecified periods of time, which I know older creationists say. So, what I'm trying to say, Ken, is do you agree that whilst there are parts of the Bible that are poetic or whatnot, Genesis is actually a literal account of history?
The creation was like 6 literal 24-hour days. Correct.
Yeah, but more than that, it's not just 6 little days. It's the order. So
Correct.
when the sun and the moon came out, that I think I can't remember, but what day the animals, the land animals, the sea animals, and all that kind of stuff. So it's literal. That is actually how creation worked, and you need to read that literally. So, okay, so yeah, okay, great. All right, so I'm going to start sharing screen now. So I'll present, I guess, the first part of the evidence.
Ian,
Yeah.
I'll stop the timer as you get that ready. You have exactly 3 minutes left for your
Yep.
opening 10 minutes.
Okay. All right.
Reminder to the audience, send in those questions, send in those challenges, objections. We look
Okay.
forward to
Is that
engaging you
right?
guys. You're good to go. Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ken, you have stated many times that evolutionary textbooks state that life comes from rocks, and I want to talk about abiogenesis first before we talk about the creation of life before we talk about the common ancestry part of life. So you have stated many times that I or you evolutionists believe that we came from rocks. Could you maybe articulate that a little bit? What do you mean by that when you say you believe you came from a rock?
Well, I show exactly what the textbook says, that the Earth began as a hot ball of rock 4.6 billion years ago. It cooled down and developed a rocky crust, a hard rock crust, and life came from the rocks. Earth formed as 4.5 billion years ago. It was a hot ball of molten rock. This is what all the textbooks teach, and this is my objection. Okay, Earth began as a hot ball of rock. Earth began as a hot, viscous ball of rock. It was still a hot, molten ball of rock. Thought formed 4.6 billion years ago. Earth began as a hot ball of rock. This is what the books say. And you atheists deny this, like R and Rod. Nobody ever said that. Yes, you do. Earth began as a hot ball of rock. And then 3.9 billion years ago, it began raining on the rocks for millions of years, and it made oceans. And in the oceans, somehow, this life came from the material in the oceans, which has to be minerals from these rocks that dissolved into the water. So, yes, you believe you came from a rock, and you should be proud of it. I don't know how you guys drive on the highway. That's your grandparents, for heaven's sake. But go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, put my slides back on, Donnie. So look, okay. So what I'll say here is this is actually what you say. So you are right. Um, but you have never once shown a textbook that says that life came from rocks. What you show are a series of abiogenesis steps where you show that there's a combination of water, rocks, and energy that show a transition between geochemistry to biochemistry. And then you kind of jump to the end and say, you believe that all life comes from rocks. So I actually think you're lying, Ken, because you cannot show me something that actually, a textbook that actually says, Luca, whatever life comes from a rock. But what you do show are all the steps that basically describes abiogenesis, but you've summarized that to a straw man kind of argument that says life comes from rock. But what I kind of want to point out though is, and let me introduce you to Genesis 1:24 from the King James Version. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and the beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And remember, Ken, you said that we need to take Genesis literally, and you said that bring forth means to give birth. So I say to you, Kent, that it's not the evolutionary textbooks that says that we come from rocks. It is your Bible that supports abiogenesis. Your Bible is saying clear as day that all living creatures come from rock. So if I read this and I read, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, to me, a literal reading of that is simple, that rocks give birth to living creatures, and it's your Bible that says that, not evolutionary textbooks. So, Ken, please explain that.
Actually, before you do, Kent, note that down. That's a little bit over 10 minutes. What we'll do for the discussion, as we've been doing, Ian, is we'll give you both plenty of time to lead the way.
Do it back and forth.
So,
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
We can, but I'd like to hear what Ken says because and this is why it was important that we use the KJV because this is from the KJV. Ken said, "Bring forth" means to give birth. That's fine. This is a literal reading of Genesis. I would love to hear explanation of this, but I would say one of my evidences for abiogenesis is the Bible. The Bible, clear reading and clear as day, is telling me that rocks gave birth to life or abiogenesis.
Okay, let's give Kent a minute to respond, and then Kent, jump right into your 10-minute opening statement. Go ahead.
Okay. The phrase bring forth can mean many things. I can bring the milk forth out of the refrigerator. Okay. Bring forth is not limited to create life. Okay. But when God tells the dirt to come alive, that is very different than the dirt coming alive by itself. Man can take clay out of the ground and shape it into a coffee cup and bake it in the oven and make a coffee cup out of clay. That's very different than to say the coffee cup made itself with no man involved. So
Remove the who made themselves. What you just said, what your exact words was, the dirt come alive. All right. So that to me is forget who made it. It could be God, could be Allah, could be whatever. It doesn't matter who made it. Your phrase is the dirt comes alive. Ergo, the dirt gave birth to life. I mean, how am I reading this differently? I am reading this literally what the Bible is saying. So I get there could be different meanings, but you yourself said the dirt comes alive. Forget the mechanism.
God is capable of taking dirt and making life. The dirt is not capable of making life by itself. Man can take iron ore from the ground and do lots of things to it and make a car, but the iron ore cannot make the car by itself. Your
So how did
religion.
God make life? So is
Oh
it
no,
magic?
that's a miracle. That's amazing. How did the
So it's
dirt
magic.
make life? How did the soup make life without a designer?
All I can say, Ken, is when I read the Bible literally, that's what it reads to me. That
Avoiding
earth,
avoiding
rocks
avoiding the
give
question,
birth.
Your Honor.
Okay, guys, let's just stay on track. We're gonna have a lot of time to
Yep.
interact and
We'll
discuss
explore
the
this more
topic.
later, but Ken, go for it. We'll explore this later.
Kent, we'll give you 10 minutes to help us set the foundation for what will be discussed tonight on the topic of evolution and common descent. Kent, go ahead. You get 10 minutes.
Well, he covered quite a few topics at the beginning. First of all, he did not run away at all or go away crying from his last debate when he said about starlight being measuring 30,000 light years away. I said many times, if you go back and listen to it, that a light year is a distance. It's not a time. It's a distance. And if the star is 300,000 light years away, it could have been made yesterday at that position. And so I go through all this on my video number 7. A light year is a distance. It's not a time. And the Bible says 17 times God stretched out the heavens. So if he made the earth and then the stars and he stretched them out, they could be 1 billion light years away and still be only 6,000 years old. How can you not get that? If I could take this pencil and zoom it at the speed of light over to, Australia, you're confusing distance with time. Starlight might be measurable at 30,000 light years. That doesn't prove the Bible wrong. He could have made it yesterday at that position. So no, I'm not running away at all. So I covered very clearly in my seminar, I've done it many times, there are 6 different meanings to the word evolution. Cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter. Where did it come from? You guys have never answered. Chemical evolution, how did all these elements come from hydrogen gas from an explosion? Hydrogen, helium, lithium is going to turn into iron and lead, and you can't fuse past iron. How did stars form? You guys have no answer for any of this. You have such a wild religion, you want to start with the assumption that all these they're just there. Like, oh, we just moved into the neighborhood, and there was a house with $40 billion laying in it, so I'm all set. No. Where did time, space, matter come from? Where did the universe come from? And then how did life get started? You guys don't want to talk about that because it's really serious. It is an essential part of the problem of your religion. So then we talk about macroevolution, changes between the different kinds of animals. And before we get stuck on what's the definition of a word kind, I think a 4-year-old can tell you that a dog and a fox are probably the same kind of animal. And if you put a dog and a banana in front of the 4-year-old, they'd say, no, they're not the same kind. I bet a 2-year-old could do that. Try it, okay? I had a bunch of 5-year-olds once, and I showed a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. I said, which one is not like the others? They always get it every time. I've done it hundreds of times. The banana. So I think you're completely missing the point, deliberately, I'm sure. So we do have no evidence whatsoever for the origin of life. But the debate tonight is, once life gets started, did it descend into all these different various varieties of life? I think anybody would agree there are quite a few varieties of life forms on the planet. Man has decided to divide them up into plant life, animal life, etc. And we have decided to classify them, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The animals don't know and don't care that we're even doing that. Okay, it's purely a man-made decision to classify these creatures. The animals know what to look for. Up in our farm here, we have all kinds of animals walking around together. Our ducks don't even consider the chickens for a mate, and they don't consider the goats as a mate. Keep in mind, the chickens don't even know what they look like, but they know what to look for in a mate. The animals are smarter than most evolutionists. They know what their kind is. Okay. Now, if there's 500 varieties of chickens, most of them developed by man for a particular purpose, more meat or more egg laying or something, longer life or whatever they're doing. So man has selected slices of the already existing gene code and developed it into a cow that gives 280 pounds of milk a day, as the world's record I heard. But still a cow, and it would never survive on its own. But they took the genetic code that's already there to make milk, which is amazing. And they have selected that, and they get the ones that give more milk and more milk and more milk. And after many generations, pretty soon you get a cow that gives a whole lot of milk. Now it's weaker in other areas, just like the dogs. They've developed 339 breeds of dogs, and they probably had a common ancestor called a dog. And you guys just don't get it. Your original picture you put up is a very accurate one. There's a family tree of dogs. There's a family tree of cats. There's no roots that are connected down deeper in the ground. These family trees that you guys make are complete imagination. This is not science. You can say, we've look at this. We've drawn a line to connect the amoeba to the human and the ladybug and the pine tree. That's not science. I wish you guys could have just admit it. I know that you're afraid to admit this is just lines on paper, because then you might lose government funding for your religion. And your religion could not survive without government funding, forcing it down kids' throats into public school. So this is propaganda. This isn't science. To say that the humans and the ostriches and the dinosaurs and the frogs and the turtles and the whales have a common ancestor is simply artwork. The purpose of the debate tonight, and I know it's going to take you an hour to get to it, okay? But where is the evidence that would justify drawing these lines on paper that we all teach the kids? Where is the evidence to say a protozoa turned into a fish and then ultimately a human? Where's the evidence for that? We don't see protozoa doing anything today except making baby protozoa. They've even had creatures with a very, very short generation time. Bacteria, single cell creatures, they get born, grow up, get married, have kids in 8 hours. 8 hour full generation. With humans, it's much greater than that. So they've done thousands and thousands of generations, and they can't get it to make anything but a bacteria. But yet you have a line on paper connecting bacteria or protozoa to humans. And the textbooks are teaching the kids all the forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor. That's not science. That's propaganda. That's a lie. There's no evidence to support that. And tonight, you're supposed to give all the audience evidence for why we should teach this to the kids. This textbook author admitted, Glencoe is one of the top 4 publishers, or was back in '94, the primitive unicellular organism. Then it says no traces of those events remain. Even Stephen Gould, the rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as a trade secret of paleontology. I point out over and over, there is no fossil record. There are fossils by the trillions. None of them talk. None of them have a date stamped on them. And finding a fossil in the dirt and concluding that it has somehow changed into something else or is halfway between A and B and is a transition, that's silly. That's not science. All you know from that fossil is it died. And if it looks to you halfway between a fish and an amphibian, wow, it's got short legs, okay? Somebody could just as easily argue, Your Honor, that's something that went extinct. You don't know that that creature wasn't always producing babies that had little legs and could walk on land like the coelacanth, okay? You don't know that this fossil is transitional because we don't see it happening today. And you guys absolutely don't get it. Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Science, knowledge gained from observation and experiments. Nobody sees a cow produce a non-cow, ever. I live in an area with lots of cow farmers around me, cattle farmers. They'll all tell you, they always bring forth a baby cow. Science, definition of science from the word scientia, meaning knowledge. What do we know? Now, we know cows make baby cows. We know that. We do not know that we should draw a line on paper connecting a cow to a banana. But you guys want to call this science. Here we got the cow connected to the dinosaur and the sunflower. That's not science. That's something you believe. And even if later it turns out to be true, at this point today, 2024, it's not science, okay? Knowledge that is concerned with the physical world and the phenomena that entails unbiased observations and experimentation. Okay, do some experiments. Make a bacteria turn into something other than a bacteria. They've been trying and can't make it happen. And if a whole bunch of scientists in the laboratory can finally force this to happen, that does not prove it happened in nature over millions of years. Even that would not help your evolution theory. Even if scientists could make life in the laboratory, that wouldn't prove it happened by itself. It would help demonstrate it takes intelligence to make life. That's what it would demonstrate. But even if they can make life, that's not evidence that your religion should be taught as science. Let's see. Science, scientia, Latin word for knowledge, from the verb scire, which means to know. What do we know? Okay, it's used any type of knowledge or expertise. Knowledge, science is knowledge gained from using observations and experiments. I've been saying for 35 years now, there is no scientific evidence for evolution. It's a religious belief, and you're welcome to it. But you should call it a religion. That's all it is. Science, the word means knowledge. We know cows produce cows. We do not know that cows should be connected to every other life form. We don't know that. You believe that. And you might believe it very strongly. And you might convince other people to believe it. I'm sure the Muslims have convinced a lot of people to be Muslims, and the Jehovah's Witnesses have convinced a lot of people to believe like them. Convincing a lot of people to believe like you believe is not science. Hitler convinced 55 million Germans to believe what he was doing. And it just doesn't prove right or wrong. So here we go. Definition of science: a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the testable for explanation and predictions. I predict cows will always produce cows. I predict bacteria will always make baby bacteria. I predict, sunflowers will always make baby sunflowers, even though we now have 70 varieties of sunflowers. They're still sunflowers. I predict it always has been that way. I predict it always will be that way. That is science, okay? Religions attempt to understand and explain the world, but religion is not considered science. I agree. And evolution is a religion. It's not science. Science, knowledge attained through study or practice. Show me any creature. Show the evidence tonight, Ian, of why you believe these charts should be considered science. Why do you believe your common ancestor was a protozoa and you have the same ancestor as a sunflower? Is it because you have similar DNA? Your Honor, that's
10 seconds.
That's evidence they got the same designer, not evidence for ancestry. Go ahead.
All right, Kent, thank you for that 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes each. Gentlemen, I appreciate the points, the arguments that we can now engage in a discussion. Let's give you the first 20 minutes or so to lead the way. Okay,
Yep.
so again, the question we're dealing with tonight is common descent in the origin of species. And so, Ian, let's throw it over to you and go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that, Donnie. Chuck my slides back on if you can. And Kent, that was a lot of words, basically, to say nothing. And look, out of interest, your 15 years of teaching science, how is your knowledge of botany? Like, do you know much about plants?
Yeah, I'd say I've eaten quite a few of them, and we raise quite a few of them around here. I'm not the world's
You,
expert, but
you should carry one with you everywhere you go, just to make sure that it makes up for the oxygen that you're wasting. All right. So what I was trying to say before,
hold it,
Kent,
Donnie,
was
another ad hominem, but go ahead.
it was an insult, but yes, I got you. Okay, so what I was trying to say before, Kent, was in regards to abiogenesis, I just wanted the audience to understand that when evolution talks about life, we're trying to discover the mechanism of how we change from geochemistry to biochemistry. And we talk about things like, rocks and the minerals and all of that kind of in the rocks, maybe with water as a catalyst, maybe with some sort of energy, lightning, or maybe some heat from the ground. However, we don't know yet, but however it works, we are still made from the same chemicals and the same molecules that rocks are made from. So we're trying to discover the processes, whereas you have just told me that the Bible says rocks gave birth to life and the process was magic. So I just wanted to kind of highlight, you will never find an evolutionary textbook that will say that. What you'll try to find is some hypotheses on how that can happen, whereas your position is that it's magic. So I just wanted the audience to understand that. So look, I'm going to talk about Luca now. The way I've kind of structured this was talk about how life started and then talk about Luca. And I'll talk about one of the best evidence for Luca as well. So, okay, next slide. All right. So moving on to common ancestry, and as I said, focusing on Luca. Um, Now, Kent, you have said in the past that all we know from, in fact, you said in your presentation just then that all we know from fossils is that it died and we don't know much about that. Could you maybe just expand a little bit? What do you mean by, all we know about a fossil is that it's died? Because I want to talk about how we know more about the fossil than just that it died. But you always say all we know about a fossil is that it died. Can you maybe expand what you mean by that?
Sure. When you find a fossil, it doesn't talk. There's no date stamped on it. All you could prove is it lived for a short time, big to get the size it is, and it died. Could you prove it had children from finding the bones? Just a yes or
Well,
no.
Well, I mean, children maybe not, but definitely parents. Okay, so
Or,
I'm going to
so
highlight.
that's my point. You cannot prove it had any children. You certainly
But we
couldn't
know it
prove it
had
had
parents,
children.
and that they
Well,
had parents, and that they had parents,
and
and
I bet the
a
parents now
line going backwards.
right now going backwards. I bet the parents were always the same kind. If you find a fossil clam, I'd be willing to bet $5 the parents were clams. But you want to
But maybe a
pretend
little bit different. A
you
little
don't
bit
know that.
different clans.
You can't know that. Not from the fossil.
Well,
You can't.
is
You can
Eric
believe
an
it.
exact copy of you?
See, you
Is his
that
kid? Is your grandkids an exact copy of Eric? They're all
all
different.
all humans are obviously human. Is
Mm.
because there's variations within the human. That's not evidence we're related to a potato. You want to believe that and teach everybody that we all have a common ancestor with a potato, don't you? You believe this is science?
Yes, and I'll get there right now.
Okay,
So
go for
I
it.
just
Please do.
I do want yeah. So I do want to explore that comment, and I just want to give a couple examples of how, and using a couple of simple statements, how when you look at that statement, you can infer. Okay, so I'm using the word infer because there are levels of evidences, or evidence, I should say. We can infer a lot more than just a fossil tells us that we died. So take the first sentence here. The boy lost his ball. What do we know about this? Obviously, we know that a ball was lost because it says so in the statement. But we also know that it's talking about one ball. And we know this because it says ball and not balls. So it's just one. But we also know that the person that lost his ball is a male because it says the boy being obviously male. And we know that it's one male because it says boy, not boys. All right. So that's an example of a statement where you can infer a lot more information into that than just that a ball was lost. So let me give you maybe another statement to kind of clarify this even further. Um, so this statement here is they could not find their balls. So what do we know from this statement? Well, we know that it's more than one ball that was lost. Why? Because you're using the plural of the word bowl. You're using bowls instead of ball. What else do we know? We know that there's more than one person that lost their balls. And how do we know that? Because they're using the plural of the word they, and not just he or him or her or whatnot. So we know it's more than one person. But what we don't know here, Kent, that we knew from the first statement is we don't know the gender of these people. It doesn't say whether it's male or female, but we do know that it's several balls that were lost by several people. So this is where our two simple examples on statements where we can infer a lot more information just by reading into it. And that's what I'm trying to get at with the fossils. We know that a fossil is not just that it died. We know it had parents. We know from the environment where that fossil is fossilized what the environment looks like. So if it's fossilized in sedimentary rocks, deep ocean, we know it's probably, living in the ocean. It's very unlikely a land animal living in the mountain suddenly appeared in an environment that was characterized by, deep ocean environment. So we know a lot of stuff just from the fossils. So do you agree with this so far? Like, do you agree, Kent, that when you look at a statement, and just even maybe focus on this as an example if you don't want to talk about fossils, that we can infer a lot more information than just that a boy has lost his ball or a ball was lost? Can we infer several bits of information from a simple statement? So just a straightforward question to you, Kent.
Yes, and you need to carry a plant with you too. You just used a whole lot of oxygen up that said absolutely nothing. I said from a fossil, you cannot prove it had children.
Mm-hmm.
You can you?
That's it?
Yes or no? Can you prove it had children?
But but you said, no. You said all we know about that. All we know. All right. That is not all we know, Ken. That's my point. This sentence, these two sentences here is more than just all we know a ball was
Okay.
lost. That's
So-
my point, Ken.
Okay, I will concede. We know that this creature had parents.
hmm
Now, back to my question. Do you know it had children?
I've already conceded, but we know a lot more than my point was we know a lot more than it died. That was my entire point. I've used a couple examples to highlight how you can infer more information than just that one point. So let me kind of continue on anyway, because I'm glad we agree. I almost kind of want you to stop using that because I'm hoping that you understand it's more that's more than all we know, which is kind of what the point I was trying to make. Okay. Now to kind of what I think is the best evidence for Luca or evolution. So keeping in mind, Kent, that you've agreed that Genesis should be taken literally and that it is the perfect translation of God. So let's read Genesis 1:24 and 1:25. So Genesis 1:24 clearly states that not only did the rocks give birth to living creature, but if you kind of look at it carefully in Genesis 1:25 also, is that the rocks gave birth to one kind of living creature. So, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature, singular, after his kind, singular his, singular kind. To me, this is exactly what evolution is saying. Evolution is saying that abiogenesis happened. There was one last universal common ancestor, and from that we evolved all the extant species that we have today. The Bible to me confirms this. I'm literally reading the Bible as it's written, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, look, God. So in Genesis 1:24, God says, rocks gave birth to a living creature after his kind, one kind, so the one Luca. And then he reaffirms it again in Genesis 1:25. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind. This is all singular pronouns. It's one kind. This is Luca. I mean, it's plain as day written here in your Bible. I'm using this as evolution of evidence for evolution. Prove me wrong, Kent. What am I not reading literally in this Bible that you said that I should be reading literally? What am I not understanding from reading this literally?
Okay, first of all, it does not say the rocks gave birth. It says
Bring forth. Let's bring forth.
let that I can bring forth a milk out of my refrigerator. Okay,
But you told me bring forth means to give birth.
You are
I mean, you
really
say a dog brings forth another dog. What a dog? What does that mean? Does that not mean give birth?
In the case of the dog, it does. And me bringing the milk out of the refrigerator, I don't give birth to the milk. No, I think God can take the earth and make it come out of the earth, different
Using
kinds
magic.
of animals.
Using magic.
Using God. That's what you don't want to do.
Magic. God is
You
magic.
got the magic. You think the dirt did it by itself.
We are trying to investigate how it happens. You're satisfied with magic. That's all I want to get at. You're saying God used magic.
You said earlier you're trying to discover the mechanism for how it happened. Has it ever considered? Have you ever thought about maybe it didn't happen and there is no mechanism because it didn't happen?
That's not an adequate answer, and scientists do not accept magic as an answer, and we will continuously try to find what the answer is. But you are satisfied with God being the answer. In other words, you are
Okay.
satisfied when you don't know something that it's magic.
No, no, no.
Scientists are not
Sci-
satisfied with that as an answer.
Science is what we know. We do. I've said I believe God did it. I've said mine's a religion. You
How?
until well, I don't know, but I don't need to
Magic.
know. I admit it's a religion. Why don't you don't know how the rocks gave birth or became alive without either?
We
So
don't
why
know
don't
how today. That doesn't mean we don't know how later, and that doesn't mean that we should
Well,
stop trying to
that's what I
find out the
said.
how.
Until then, you can keep trying to find out how. Keep trying.
Mhm.
But until then, it's not science. It's a religion, Ian. You
But
believe
the
it happened.
process of learning how is science.
I love
You agree
learning
with
things.
that?
I agree. I love learning things. But see, until half the country does not believe in your stupid evolution religion, if you wish to teach it or believe it, that's fine. But you guys should admit, at this point today in 2024, we don't know. We could not prove it happened. We can't make it happen. We don't know for sure this is how it happened.
You need
We're
to
trying to
stop
find out.
using things like half the country or paying the taxes because that's an American thing. I'm not American. None of that sounds relevant to me. And the people that believe in evolution in my country, Australia, is much, much higher than in America.
I,
So
I'll,
just saying what happens
I'll,
in America is not
okay.
the same as what happens in Australia.
I will try to fix that for you for the Australians. I'll help them. Okay. We'll get my material translated into Australian. Okay. Now, I did not. The Bible does not say. You asked, what are you reading wrong? Okay. Look at the verse, the top one. Let the earth bring forth living creature after his kind, and then it keeps
Mhm.
going.
Yep.
Cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth. It does not say it's one common ancestor. He's making all the various kinds of animals right here.
After his kind. So I read that as he bring forth the living creature and examples. And you can read that literally and go, well, all he's actually brought forth is cattle, insects, and one beast of the earth. If I read that
Oh,
literally, it doesn't say bring forth a tiger, a lion, or it only talks about one kind. So explain to me why, if the Bible is so accurate and it's the perfect word of God, it's always in the singular.
Ian, Ian,
Yep.
you're doing it.
Yes,
You're
you
doing
can.
listen to me. You're doing exactly what you did a year ago. You're off topic.
It was destroy you.
You are supposed to give evidence for how we have a common ancestor. I don't have to defend the Bible at all. You're
So
way
you
off
can't
topic.
defend
You're
this.
trying.
You can't defend
You're
it.
trying to
You want
shift
me
the
to move
burden.
on because you can't. Just
No,
say you
I
can't
want you
defend
to
it and I'll move on. No problem.
just say you're an idiot and you can't stay on topic. Why don't you? Okay, that you're supposed to prove we have a common ancestor. I don't have to prove the Bible at all. So quit trying to change the burden of proof. And you did the same thing. It took you an hour and 10 minutes
Thanks
last
for
time.
calling me an idiot,
Just,
Kent. Look, I'm not
I'm
saying you're
sorry.
the most
Maybe,
stupidest
maybe there's a
person in the
more
world, but
appropriate
you better
word.
hope that
Okay.
person doesn't die. All right. So, all right.
What?
Let me move on. Let me move
Please
on.
do.
All
Back to the
right.
topic,
Okay.
please.
And
Where are
Back
you?
and let me say, I'm going to jump in now, just because I allowed that to flow for 12 minutes.
Okay.
But since we did hit the 12-minute mark, I
Mhm.
want to make sure we're utilizing as much of
I'm happy with
the
this back and
remaining, well,
forth
just
because
wait, as much as the remaining
sorry.
time to directly engage the question of tonight. So let me just pull it up and remind you guys. So the
Mhm.
question for tonight is this: does common descent explain the origin of the species? So let's do it as much as we can. Let's focus on engaging that question. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, and I'm saying my best evidence is Kent's Bible himself. And I made sure to kind of say, well, what is the KJV the correct version? Should we take Genesis literally? And can confirm all that stuff. So I am reading the Bible, the KJV version, as literally as possible, and this is my conclusion. And Kent won't defend it. What I'm hearing from him is he's putting it back on me. He's running away as he did last year with the whole thing on selling paradox. Um, so that's fine, Kent. We can move on. But my evidence is the Bible, and to me, when I read that literally, it says one kind. It doesn't say several kinds. It doesn't say 1,000 kinds. It says one kind. And what is one kind if not last universal common ancestor? And let me tell you, where in the Bible that last universal common ancestor evolves into species. And I'll get to that next. So this will put a little bit more color to it, right? And that is let me go through Genesis 6 and 19 and 20 because Ken always says that God asked two of every kind to be brought on this ark. And you know what, Ken? I cannot find this at all in the KJV. God did not ask for two of any kinds to come to the ark. God clearly states to bring two of every sort onto the ark. So then I have to ask myself, with a literal reading of the Bible, what the hell is a sort? What is a kind? Because when God in the Bible talks about kinds, he's talking about it in a creation context. The living creature after his kind, one singular. The beast of the earth after his kind. But when he talks about bringing the animals on the ark, he talks about sort. So I can only conclude that when the Bible talks about kind, it's talking about Luca, because it's talking about one kind. But by the time we got to Noah, that last universal common ancestor has evolved rapidly, but evolved to a lot of sorts, because then God says, bring two of every sorts onto the ark. Kent has always said two of every kinds. Tell me, where is that in the Bible? I mean, I'm looking at Genesis, and both of these passages here talk about sorts. What the hell is the difference between a kind? What is the difference between a sort? If not that a kind is Luca and sorts evolve from Luca. I mean, tell me if I'm reading this wrong, Kent.
Okay, I'll be
The
glad to.
Bible confirms evolution.
I'll be glad to. If you look up the definition of species, here it gives, in biology, a group of living organisms consisting of similar individuals capable of exchanging genes or interbreeding. Similar, type, kind, sort. These are called synonyms, okay? The Bible says they'll bring forth after their kind, or they'll bring forth after their sort. You're the first person who ever misunderstood that in the history of the planet. And you're the first person I've ever heard misunderstand that when God said they're going to bring forth the kind, the cattle kind, the bird kind, the insect kind, that nobody's ever misunderstood that before, Ian. Okay. It's obvious there are various different kinds of creatures. He names three in the first one, three different kinds. So it's obviously
And
plural.
what is that? Living creature, beast, and what? Cattle, or creeping things, I should say. So his kinds were what? Creeping things, living
Well,
creature, and
okay.
cattle. And they're all singular, by the way.
Okay.
They're not
Look
saying
up.
cattles or whole
Right.
bunch of, they're all singular.
Right. Okay. You're doing what you did a year ago. You're focusing on where is the Bible at. You've told me you believe the Bible is evidence for Luca. Thank you so much. I think you're the only
Yeah.
person who's ever
Correct.
ever thought of that. That's a brand.
Yep.
You write a book on that. That's a brand new one. What's your second evidence? Please go on. I don't have to defend the Bible. I think a
No,
4-year-old.
well, you can't. It's obvious you're a bit of an athlete, because you've been running away as far. I've never seen someone run away as fast as you have. I have to say, Ken, I reckon intelligent thoughts always follow you, but you were just too fast. You are an athlete. That's amazing. All right.
That's okay.
Okay. So look, I'll skip through this stuff anyway. It was just okay. So let's get into the genetic side of it. Okay.
Thank you. Finally, it's been an hour.
Well, you couldn't answer the fact that the Bible confirms Luca. I was reading it literally. You basically did this. Go away, intelligent thoughts. You can't catch up with me. So anyway, let's talk about genetics here. All right,
Please,
and
please.
talking about genetics, Ken. I mean, I actually think you have too much chlorine in your gene pool, right, personally. But that's just my view. Um, all right, so okay, so what I'm trying to do here is try to kind of really hone down and understand, your definition of kind. So I've taken, muntjacs as an example. So here are some examples of muntjac species. And muntjacs are a small deer from the family Cervidae. That's just what we evolutionists kind of call them. We don't call it a muntjac. We call it, from a family of Cervidae. And there are 14 muntjac species today. Would you agree that these are all what you would call at least one kind of call it the muntjac kind if you want? Would you agree that these species would be what creationists would kind of call one kind?
I think there'd be some more study involved to make sure. There's a lot of things. Some animals look similar that are not. They can't interbreed.
They
or
can bring
whatever.
forth with each other. So
Sure,
they can bring forth with each
it
other.
looks to me at first glance that these are the same kind of animal. They're a deer. They're certainly not a potato. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And to your initial agreement, which you then try to backtrack, they can all bring forth with each other. That's fine. So we agree they're the muntjac. So now let's look a bit broader. So muntjacs, obviously here you said, okay, they're the same kind. Let's look a little bit broader now, and I'm going to bring up deer. All right. So here are examples, a whole bunch of different deer species. There are about 43 extant deer species today. Now, calling it a deer family isn't very accurate. That's not a very scientific term. As I said, we call it a Cervidae family, and they include things like, the deers that you see there, but things like reindeer and moose. So they can all bring forth with each other. So I guess the question to you, Ken, is would you call these species part of the deer kind?
It looks to me like they're the same kind. Again, here's the deer. I think the deer has a family tree that may have gone back to a deer.
And look, these are easy questions because I thought you would say that. So we started off small with the muntjacs, and then we kind of brought it up to what kind of looks like a muntjac into the deer kind.
Sure.
So my question is, do you think the muntjacs and the deer are the same kind? Now, if I were to say to you, Kent, that there have been, and it's very, very rare, but there have been instances where muntjacs and deers hybridize, but the offspring are sterile. That's not to say in the past they were not sterile, but today there are very rare instances of both the muntjacs and, let's take the red deer or the mule deer having children, but that children is sterile. Would you then call the muntjac and the deers that you see on screen here today, would you call them all part of the one deer kind?
Now, at first glance, I would say yes. They're probably all the same kind. I don't know how many kinds of deer God created on day when He made the deer on day 6, but it looks to me like
There could be several deer kinds. Okay, I get that. Okay, but what I'm saying is, and I would tend to agree with you by your definition. It's not an evolutionist definition, but by your definition, Ken, that they are so closely related that even though their offsprings are sterile, that they have a very close, I call it common ancestor. You'll call it the kind. You can call it the deer kind if you want. I'll call it the evolutionist term of the Cervidae family. So I think we're kind of agreed here. Okay, so the reason why I kind of wanted to bring this up because I want to talk about humankind versus ape kind here. All right. So evolutionists would classify chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans as having a common ancestor. And we classify this as the homininic subfamily. Now, creationists would say chimpanzee and gorilla are the ape kind, and they are separate from humans who are a specially created kind. So creationists will say there is no common ancestor between chimpanzee and gorilla, ape kind, and humans, Homo sapiens, as a separate created kind. Whereas evolutionists would say all three of these have a common ancestor. Is that something that, am I articulating your belief here correctly?
yeah, those do not have a common ancestor. Okay, there's no evidence at all of an ape or chimpanzee ever producing a non-chimpanzee baby. There's no evidence
Okay,
for that.
so you've heard this before, but I want to kind of delve into it a little bit here. So let me talk about one of the best evidences of why. And then I'm going to talk about chromosomes. So we can
Fine.
see that chimpanzee and gorilla have 48 chromosomes, but interestingly, humans have 46. So if you kind of look at that on the face of things, you kind of go, well, different levels of chromosome. How can humans be the same as chimpanzees and gorilla if they have a common ancestor? Well, surprisingly, we have discovered why, and that is because we can see a chromosome fusion event has occurred where two chromosomes from chimpanzees and gorillas have fused together to make it 46 chromosomes in humans. So we have less because we saw chromosome fusion. So so the question really is, Kent, and I know you don't, but I want to ask you, do you accept that a chromosome fusion occurred here between chimpanzees and gorillas and humans? And that fusion is why we believe that there's a common descent between that. Do you agree with that?
I do not. I think that's why you believe that. I think you're mistaken. You're showing the number of chromosomes. You're not showing the number of genes. You're not showing the DNA code. That's like me saying Microsoft PowerPoint has 10 million lines of code and Microsoft Word has 10 million lines of code. Wow, that's proof.
Yeah.
Proof of a
But
common.
but I'm saying that the reason why the chromosome is different is because there was a fusion event, and we can see that fusion event. And because we can see that fusion event that has happened, then we know that in the past there was a common ancestor with humans where they all had 48 chromosomes. Humans specifically fused to have 46, but that proves that there was a common ancestor between all three on the screen here.
That is totally incorrect. You need to keep studying this a little bit more. We do not know that there was a fusion event millions of years ago or any time in the past. It might have been designed that way to start with. The DNA code from one person, if it was pulled out of your body, all the chromosomes unwound, tied together, go across the solar system twice. We're talking about a mind bogglingly complex code. You do not know that there was a fusion event. We know that it appears like they are fused. That we know. We do not know anything other than that. You wish to infer that, go ahead. Go ahead. But that's not science. Okay.
Okay, I think I can try and address this very quickly. Can you put my next slide on the screen, Donnie, if you can?
Yeah, it looks like it's still the same slide. You want to put the next slide?
Yes, I'll move it. I'll move it when it's showing. Okay, thanks, Donnie. All right, so let's go back to the deer kind. All right, so here is the examples of muntjac and deers. I'll put them together so you can kind of see it. But I want to kind of highlight now the different chromosomes that sit underneath here. So we can see that the red deer and the mule deer have both 68, where other deers have 70. when we look at the red deer, we can see that there was a chromosome fusion of 23 and 4 that fused together. And we look at the other deers, and it looks like, well, chromosome 1 is what kind of, has kind of led to this fusion event. Interestingly, the mule deer also has a chromosome fusion. It's chromosome fusion 1 and 2. So it's a different fusion event for these two different species. And that's why they have 68 chromosomes. And that's why the other deers have 70. When you look at the muntjacs, though, there's a very huge amount of different chromosomes here. The Reeves muntjac, as you can see, has 46 chromosomes. And when we look at the genetics of it, we can see that there are 12 fusion events. 6 of them seem to be from a common ancestor, and there were 6 completely new ones. And then when we look at the other types of muntjacs, the fear muntjacs at the bottom left, the gongshang and the criniforms muntjac, they all show different chromosomes that have been fused. So fusion events happen. So Kent, my question is very simple. It is, you deny that there's a chromosome fusion that occurred between chimpanzees and gorillas and humans, and you say, well, this is why it's separate. But yet you agree that the muntjacs and the deers are possibly the one deer kind, but yet they have different chromosomes, and yet we can see chromosome fusion happen here. Why is there two different standards, and how do you reconcile that in your response to me, or your answer back to me?
First of all, Ian, I did not deny that there's a chromosome fusion. I said we don't know. You cannot prove if there was a chromosome fusion in any of these creatures. They could all have been designed that way. I don't think it's possible to prove such a thing. So don't put words in my mouth. I did not deny it.
Why would God design two chromosomes?
You're going off on a different topic. You're changing topics. I said I did not deny it. I said we do not know that there was a fusion event. It could have been designed that way. Why God did it? Oh, I have no idea. Why the DNA? The
so God designed it to look exactly like a fusion event. That's what you're saying. I mean, you're saying.
I'm gonna jump in. I just want to clarify. Ian, are you saying if all of those creatures go back to the same kind, fusions would be necessary?
The deer one, let's say the deer one's easy to explain because there's only one fusion. There's two separate fusion events, but it leads to two animals with 68 chromosomes versus 70. So what I'm saying is that the common ancestor of all these deers had 70 chromosomes. And
right. As they started Ian, I'm just going to jump. I just want, yeah, exactly what I'm saying. So your argument is, if all of these species belong to one kind, at one point in time, they would have had the same number of chromosomes, but now they have different.
Yes. And what I'm saying is both the red deer and the mule deer have shown a chromosome fusion in two separate chromosomes. They didn't fuse the same, they fused differently. And that's why there's 68 now.
Okay, so you're saying the reason they have a variety of chromosomes is because of chromosome fusions.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And we can tell this by looking at the genetics. We can see the 70 chromosomes of the fallow deer, and we can see that both the red deer and the mule deer have, a longer chromosome that seems to fit two smaller chromosomes in the fallow deer. Interestingly, though, is that both the red deer and the mule deer have two separate chromosome fusions. So if God created this, then he created it to look like there was a fusion event that happened to have fused in two different ways across two different species. Why is that, Kent? Why did God make the red deer fuse their chromosome differently from the mule deer? And it both looks as if it was a combination of two shorter chromosomes in the other deer species. I mean, is he trying to trick us?
I'm going to jump in. Okay, I appreciate that. Hopefully that helps the audience. I just want these arguments to be understandable to everybody. Kent, let's throw it back to you to reiterate the question. If these species go back to the same kind, why do they now have different numbers of chromosomes?
Oh, we don't know. We don't know that they fused. The fact that two of them look like they're stuck together does not mean they fused. They might have. And I think there needs to be more research. But he starts with the dogmatic statement.
But the research has been done, Kent. I'm not making this up. There are papers that show it has been fused. What you're saying is that you don't believe the papers. Is that your answer is you don't believe the papers? That's my reading of it. Is that right?
There are papers on all kinds of topics. Nazi Germany had thousands of papers how Hitler's a wonderful man too. Writing a paper does not make it true. Okay. I'm sitting in the middle of a library with thousands of books here.
And with that example of Nazi Germany, did America, Australia, China, any other country you want, did they also have papers saying that as well? Because the thing about scientific papers is that it's global. All right. So evolution is a global, it's a science that's global. So you have papers written in different countries that affirm this. You're giving me an example of one country that's being run by a dictator. So my question to you is to make sure it's a similar example is, Is there the same papers in America? Is America also writing papers that saying, Nazi Germany or Hitler, whatever, is the most fantastic thing ever? Give me a proper example and not just make up these rhetorics.
Oh, there were plenty of Nazi supporters in America and in Australia.
Did they write papers?
I don't know.
That's what you said, papers. Did they write papers?
We're way off
Peer
topic
review.
here, Donnie.
You
You're
brought
saying,
up the topic, Ken.
Okay.
You're and the athletic thing's happening again.
Okay, I'll step in.
Bye-bye.
Kent did bring up the topic. Ian, you had a chance to respond. Let's get back to common descent now. We're even. It's fair play.
I'm still
Ian, move
waiting
on to your
for the
next
answer.
point. Go ahead.
Okay.
So Kent, do you wanna sorry, Kent, you go.
You do not know that there's been a chromosome fusion in the past. How many lines of code are there in the red deer? Those 68 chromosomes, how much DNA is that? How many lines of code is there in that
But
DNA
Kent,
code?
we know this. But that's the thing. You
We.
say we don't know, but we
Who's
know
the
this.
you keep saying we. Who's the we?
Scientists. So the
Oh,
people that have done the
no.
papers that
I'm
measure
the-
these chromosomes.
Ian, I'm the scientist. I don't agree.
No, we know you're an athlete. We don't know you're a scientist. We know that you run away. The intelligence thoughts just can't basically catch up to you. So we've ascertained it. So all I'm saying, Ken, is that we can look at those chromosomes and we can see there's one longer chromosome that pretty much matches exactly two shorter ones. And then you're saying to me, oh, we don't know. But when we present this evidence to you, why don't you believe that? Like, tell me your rationale that disputes why we don't know a chromosome. Let's flip this around. Why do you think that when the scientists say there's a chromosome fusion event and they present evidence of the exact DNA sequence that is basically an exact copy of two shorter ones put together? All right. Why do you say that's not evidence? Like I don't understand it. If I rip this paper in half and I put it together and the words happen to match, to me that's one piece of paper that's been put together. But you're saying I don't believe that. So tell me, Kent, why do you doubt the evidence? People who have studied this are telling you, and you're telling me I don't believe it. That's your answer. I don't believe it.
Well, you keep putting words in my mouth. I did not say I don't believe it. I'm saying we can't prove that's what happened. Okay.
But we did. That's what I'm
We
trying to
did.
say. If we have,
We did. Who's the we? You proved it, or you read a paper?
I
will
this is
write
on
a
me.
paper.
That I didn't actually put the links to the sources,
look at
so
this,
it's
right
definitely
here.
on me.
I'm going to write a paper, not right here. It did not happen. There.
Sure.
I just
write that
I just
paper.
wrote a paper. I wrote a paper.
Yes, and
Ian.
is it peer reviewed and published in a respectable journal?
There, all the peers here tonight. Did you see me write this? How many saw me write this? All the peers agree.
So
it
Ken,
didn't
you
happen.
don't
Go on.
understand what peer review is. You think peer review is basically holding up a paper that you read and everyone kind of nodding and saying, yes, I agree. Is that honestly, are you joking, or is that what you think peer review is? Because this could be the problem, Ken. I think maybe we've got down to the problem with why you deny science, is that you actually have this straw man version as to how science works. You actually believe if I wrote that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know whether you're joking or not. I'm taking you seriously. If I were to write something on a piece of paper, show it around to my audience and say, do you believe that? And they nod, then that becomes science. Is that what you're telling me, or are you joking? I really don't know with you sometimes.
Well, I am joking to try to get you to understand the folly of what you are saying, okay?
But
you
it
do
just
not
makes you
know.
look stupid, Ken. It makes you look dumb and ignorant.
Okay, guys, I'm going to jump in. So I just want to keep it as equally timed as possible. We're going to throw it to Kent. Kent, take as much time as you need to respond to this argument, and then Ian, let's move on to another.
Okay. Sure, but just so he understands what I want him to tell me why, and it can't be because I don't know or I don't believe. Why does he not think the evidence that shows a chromosome fusion and I use this example in the deer, 70 chromosomes in the ancestral species moving down to 68, where we can see exactly which chromosome fits the two smaller chromosomes that's been fused. Why does he not believe it?
I don't know that I believe it or don't believe it. I'm saying this cannot be proven that it happened. Could it be that all the deer in the world went through a traumatic experience like Noah's flood, and they had to diversify from Noah's Ark and live in different climates, and there was some kind of pressure put on them to cause them to have mutants that were more likely to survive? They could be a chromosome fusion, but that is still not evidence.
You just described common descent. So irrespective of whether it's a Noah's flood or whatever, you're saying that some sort of environmental pressure was so great, you're saying it's Noah's flood, that they had to diversify from 70 chromosomes to these deer speciating to 68. Fine. Let's just drop the deer and put hominin there. Okay, 48 chromosomes. Big catastrophe, Noah's flood, and they then diversify to chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans. common descent. I mean, your argument basically just confirms that humans are the same kind as gorillas and apes. Like, what am I not understanding from what you're saying?
Well, if you want to be an ape, go ahead, Ian. You can be whatever.
We are all apes.
You can identify however you want. Okay, are you a he ape or a she ape? You can identify however you want. That's a different
I
story.
am a he ape. Are you a
Okay.
mammal? Are you a mammal?
Man
Are
has
you a
decided.
vertebrate? I mean, it's a classification. Yes,
Right.
we are all apes. Yes, we're all mammals. Yes, we're all vertebrate. So I'm still waiting, Donnie. Is he going to answer why, or is he still going to say he doesn't believe it? Because that is my takeout, Ken. Unless you want to change my mind, my takeout
Well,
is you don't believe
I
the
think
evidence.
Kent's answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kent, you said there could have been, after the flood, fusion events here in these various species. Okay. So
Okay.
I guess
I'm
there's his
pointing out.
answer. Maybe we should
Which
move
means
on.
it's common descent,
I have said,
right?
I would say probably all these deer could be put on a chart with the family tree, and they might have had a common descent from a deer.
Mhm.
That does not prove that deer is related to the sunflower and the snake. Your chart
Talking
that you
about
want to
chromosome
teach the
fusion
kids.
here of the deer. So
Okay,
then maybe stick to chromosome fusion.
let's assume the chromosome fusion event did happen. Let's assume creatures getting off the ark had to diversify, and some of the deer went north and some of the deer went south, and some had a mutation in the chromosomes fused, and they were able to still have children. And now we got different populations of deer. They're
Okay,
still
look,
deer.
I agree with
That's
that. Now, I don't agree that it happened with Noah's flood. But what
okay,
you just described is, there are speciation that happens from
right.
a common ancestor, and through whatever that those events happened, some has got 70, some has 68. That's essentially what you're saying, right?
I'm saying it is certainly possible that there can be what happens when a human gets an extra chromosome today? You get things that are detrimental from
Mhm.
adding chromosomes, like Down syndrome and stuff like that. So
It was
I
syndrome, yeah.
yeah. So I think that the fact that the chromosome is so complex, to duplicate it or to duplicate it incorrectly is highly likely, like a typographical error when you're typing out a huge book or
There
copying
is
or printing.
nothing in your response, Kent, that has basically debunked what I just said. So if you just substitute what you just said with deer with chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans. Okay, there was some sort of ape
There's no
kind.
connection. There's no connection. Humans are
No,
not.
you're supposed to
Humans.
debunk what I'm saying, and I'm just saying I've listened to what you said, and I've said, okay, take the deer out of it and put the chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans, and one's gone north and one's gone south, and mutations happen, and it's still the common ancestor. So what I've always said in this presentation, this part of the presentation, is that humans, chimpanzees, and gorillas share a common ancestor. Your response is, well, the floods happen with deers, and one's kind of gone north and one's kind of gone south. Mutations happen, and that's why they've got different chromosomes. Okay, swap the deer with chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans, and you've just confirmed to me that after Noah's flood, they could very well have speciated into chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans with different chromosomes, but they still have that common ancestor. You haven't debunked me at all. You basically confirmed what I've just said.
You've made such a lousy comparison here. I think that the deer, are these interfertile? Can the red deer mate with the reindeer? I don't know. I've never studied that. Okay, probably somebody has. And
They
to put,
can, but the muntjacs and deers will have a problem.
okay, but to put the deer on the chart with the sunflower and the frog, that's not science. That's stupid. If you wish to believe it, fine. And to say humans and chimpanzees and gorillas have a common ancestor from Noah's flood, that's also stupid. I think maybe the different skin colors of humans, we got different types, racial characteristics, they call them, but actually there's only one race, the human race. But the fact that there's varieties of humans, tall, short, dark skinned, light skinned, that is not evidence we're related to the chimpanzees or monkeys. There are tens of thousands of differences between chimpanzees and humans, probably millions of differences. If you wish to believe you're a chimpanzee, go ahead. But that's not
So
science.
if I can summarize your position, is that what you're now saying is that with the deer kind, there could have been changes in the chromosome. In some cases, there has been chromosome fission where it's an actual split, but let's just focus on
Maybe
the
so.
chromosome
Maybe
fusion
so.
part of it. So
Could have
you're
been.
saying that potentially, maybe so. I know you don't want to commit, but what could have happened with the deer kind is that there could have been a chromosome fusion too, and that's why we see the different chromosomes. But with humans or hominid kind, which consists of chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans, what you're saying is, oh no, 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 that's not an example of a common ancestor. Even though I accept it could be an example of common ancestor with deer, but with this, it's different because, and your rationales, they look different.
That's not the only reason. I said there are thousands of differences. Somebody humans and chimps and gorillas in the same category. The humans don't care. The gorillas don't care. The chimps don't care.
Interestingly, what is the difference
Will
between a
not even try to
chimpanzee?
mate with the humans. The
What is the
chimps look
difference?
for another chimp. We can do a whole program on that. The differences between humans and chimps. Donnie did a whole show on the chromosome fusion thing. And did you write a book about it, Donnie, or an article about it, chromosome fusion? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to read that, if the complex chromosomes fuse together, that's not evidence that it happens by chance. Nobody wrote the code. You could have a typographical error in a print shop where you end up with half of one book stuck to the other half of a different book. That's a printing error. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the storyline may or may not follow. But your analogy is so silly. Carry that plant with you, please. Okay. You're saying a lot of nothing here. To see apes and humans and chimpanzees.
We're not going to get anywhere here because Kent, I can't get you.
Ian, I just want to make, okay, we're going to do this. Kent, finish your thoughts there. And then Ian, let's throw it back to you. You are in the affirmative. We've only got 15 minutes left. So let's give you the opportunity to pick another major topic.
I've got one more to kind of talk to Ken about, but yeah.
Okay,
so
Kent,
Kent,
let's get you. Okay, Kent,
you wanted Kent to finish?
Finish your thoughts there. I just want to make sure there's not too much over talk, just because I want the audience to hear both sides. Kent, go ahead, finish your thoughts you're making.
I admit that Ian thinks he's an ape. I admit that.
I am an ape.
I do. Okay, maybe I do not think I am. Okay.
I'm also an animal.
I'm also attracted by gravity, and so is my coffee cup. That's proof we're related.
Yes, you are related because you both have mass. I fail to see your point.
I know you fail to see the point. Give us your next one.
All right, so just let me quickly summarize this. So Kent seems to be applying different and inconsistent standards between the two when he defines a kind. He's unable to articulate why a deer kind or the human/ape kind are different, except that it's obvious, or that there are huge. He's never articulated. He's just trying to appeal to basically it's obvious. It's eyeball science basically. So let me kind of move on anyway. Like I said, I don't think Kent will agree, but I think we can all agree that I don't think Kent's answer was very satisfactory, and he's applying different inconsistent standards. All right. So next, I want to talk a little bit about genetics. Kent, as I said, Kent, I think you've got too much chlorine in your gene pool, so this might be relevant. All right, genetics. So I think this is probably a very strong evidence for common ancestry, and I want to bring up a whole bunch of different types of, genetic elements that you're probably familiar with. And I know, Kent, the first one is you're quite familiar with ERVs, or endogenous retroviruses. And just quickly for the audience, this is viral insertions integrated into the human genome, makes up about 8% of the human genome. And from what we can see, it's about 3,200 ERVs, of which 96% are shared with chimpanzees. And the key thing I want to note here, Ken, is it's the same ERV genetic sequence in the same chromosome, in exactly the same location of the chromosome across, humans and chimpanzees.
Well, you were making
just don't want to talk about ERVs.
Okay, yeah, you are making that statement that it's the exact same one. I don't know that. I've never studied that. I didn't look at them under the microscope.
Of course, you never studied it. So you can check it. Okay, and we won't take time to debate, but you can check it. But I'm telling you, it is. And if you disagree with it, then that's fine. But I'm glad I'm glad you're answering honestly and saying you don't know because you don't know. Okay, so ERVs.
I'm going to jump in. Ian, go ahead, and let's try and keep it free flowing rather than too many long responses. Go ahead, Kat. Feel free to respond.
ERVs were discovered in the late 60s. Okay. First evidence of ERVs was found in the 60s and 70s. Here you can read it for yourself. 1965, the first reported finding of an EIV. On the biological level, the main difference is bacteria are free-living cells, while viruses are non-living collection of molecules that need a host to survive. I think the ERVs were designed very nicely by a wise creator to do all kinds of cool things. We now know not all viruses are bad. We know there are beneficial viruses present in our gut, skin, and blood that kill undesirable bacteria and more dangerous viruses. There's a war going on. Millions of viruses in the world laid end to end would stretch 100 million light years. That's on this planet, okay? Living harmlessly on our body outnumber human cells 10 to 1, playing a vital role. Viral genome junk hits the trash. Donna, you did a great article on ERVs. They are designed as part of our system. And the fact that chimpanzees might have the ERVs in the same place might prove that we both live on the same planet and breathe the same air and drink the same water. And we need these same ERVs to do the same thing. I bet chimpanzees have flexor muscles to pull their fingers in and extender muscles to pull them out, just like we do. Wow, that's not proof of relationship. It's a good design that works. I bet Ford and Chevy trucks both have round tires. That's a good design that works. So I think that they're finding out now, as they discover more about ERVs in the last 50 years, they're finding, wow, ERVs are not evidence for evolution. They're not, let's see, junk DNA. Where's the article I had on that? I just read about that today. Okay, it's been a busy day for me. They play key roles in controlling immune response, another important process necessarily for the survival of mammals. Maybe we have them in the same place because we both have to survive in the same world. It is not proof of
Yeah.
common ancestry,
Ken,
Ian.
are you just going to explain what ERVs are? Is that what your intention is? Because
Endogenous
that wasn't
retro.
where I was going.
No,
It's not
I
where I was
said it.
going with my
I'm
argument.
ex-
You can explain what ERVs are to the audience, and that's fine. If that's
okay.
what you want to do, I can give you some more
No, no.
time. But
I'm
that's not
explaining
the
why.
point of my argument.
I'm explaining why they're not evidence for evolution. They're evidence
Yeah.
of a great design. They're
Yeah.
endogenous
Okay. And I
retroviruses.
will rebut that. Just give me a couple
Okay.
more minutes because I know we always talk about. I know I've seen you talk about ERVs. I've seen Donnie talk about ERVs, but ERVs only make up 8% of the genome. All right. So let's talk
Sure.
about the other genetic elements that are rarely talked about. So ALU elements. So the difference between ERVs and ALU elements, these are small stretches of DNA sequences that have the ability to jump positions within the genome, right? They make up about 11% of the human genome, or about 1 million ALU elements. Interestingly, when we kind of compare these ALU elements with chimpanzees, gorilla, and rats, we see a decreasing amount of shared ALU elements as if they were sharing common ancestry. So 95% of them shared with humans and chimpanzees. About 90% of them are shared between humans and gorillas. About 50% are shared with rats. And if you build a phylogeny tree, you can see that humans and chimpanzees probably split off from a common ancestor with gorillas. And then there was a common ancestor between humans and chimpanzees which split off. And that's why we're sharing this, step hierarchy of ALU elements. So that's one point of it. So that this is so I'm not asking you to describe what ALU elements are. That's not the point of this argument. So I'll go to the next point. Line elements, long interspersed nuclear elements. These are also very similar to ALU elements in that they can change positions or jump between the genome. The only difference between this or signs, which are short interspersed nuclear elements, of which ALU belongs in that category, is that lines can jump by themselves, whereas ALU requires assistance to do that jumping. Now, line elements make up 20% of the human genome, and they are longer. So they're, whilst it's 1 million of ALU makes up 11%, it's because they're shorter DNA sequences. Lines are much longer, so there's only 800,000 of them. And if you look at what's shared between chimpanzees, gorillas, and rats, 85% of them are shared with chimpanzees, 85% again are shared with gorillas, and about 60% are shared with rats. Now they're so accurate. Okay, so I'll go through this very quickly. They're so accurate that not only can we tell, where the common ancestry is split from by the shared elements of extant species today, is that they're so accurate that we can tell when we do genetic testing that your great grandfather, or whatever, was born in a part of, and this is the diagram on the bottom right. We know which country and which to the level which city that your ancestor was born, whether it's in Egypt or whether it's Morocco, because of the shared ALUs and all these elements between the people there. It is that accurate that we can pinpoint geography. So getting to the point of what I'm trying to bring out here is
Please.
that ARVs make up 8% of the human genome, and we know less than 1% of them are functional. And I know that you've seen papers that kind of show this, and of what is it, the Golo gene, or there's a couple of genes that creationists love to kind of bring up all the time, and it's the only genes that they bring up. Less than 1% of ERVs have been shown to be functional; the rest have not been. AAU elements, 11% of the human genome, less than 1% have shown to have any function at all. Line elements, 20%, less than 1% are functional. That's a total of 39% of the human genome, of which 95% of them are shared between chimpanzees and gorillas. And we're talking about the exact DNA sequences in the same chromosomes, in the same location of those chromosomes. That's how we kind of measure how similar they are. So my question to you, Ken, is very simple. When you have common ancestry and you have evolution, it explains this perfectly. We know that the common ancestor between humans slash chimps and gorillas split out, and that's why humans and chimps have closer similarity than humans and gorillas. And we know the common ancestor then of humans and chimpanzees are split out, and that's why there's more common between humans and chimpanzees. And that's how we build that nested hierarchy. Now, my question to you is simple. How do you explain this? I mean, is it, I've heard that it's God created this way. Well, it's interesting, because why would God create something where less than 1% of it is not functional? I've heard, well, it was all there, but they've since been degraded because it's the fall of man, or whatever. Well, that's interesting. Why did they degrade in exactly the same way between these three different species? And I'll focus on chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans. And I wouldn't even talk about rats. So let's focus on those three. Why did they degrade in that exact same way? And I've also heard, I think even Donnie brings this up, that there are mutational hotspots that are likely where mutations happen. And that's why you've got these mutations that happen in these hotspots. So the question is, fine, but we're not talking about 2 or 3 genes. We're talking about 39% of the human genome, which is 3 billion base pairs here, right? We're talking about 39% of them that are matching exactly between human chimpanzees, human gorillas, human rats, obviously to a lesser degree. So I'll stop it there, Ken, because I want you to explain not what an ERV is or what an ALU element is why do you see this very nice nested hierarchy of genetic elements, whether it's ERVs or ALU or line? Like, explain that from a creationist perspective.
Okay. I want to keep it equally timed. So we're going to give Kent an uninterrupted response to answer your question and arguments. Ian, go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, go for it, Ken.
Okay, there's a very complex program for computers called spell check that's able to jump around in the document and find misspelled words. Wow, that's pretty cool. Somebody designed that program to go around and find misspelled words. Maybe somebody designed this incredibly genetic code to go around and find mistakes or correct them. And your statement that only 1% are functional, you certainly don't know that. You said 1% have been shown to be functional. You know, just 200 years ago, they had a list of 180 vestigial organs that the body didn't need because they didn't know what they were for. They thought your appendix and your tonsils and your tailbone were all vestigial. You don't need them anymore in the nictitating membrane. Now they know the function. Maybe they just haven't studied it enough yet, Ian. So to say that there's 1% and therefore conclude that we're related to a gorilla, that's quite a leap of faith. And you do have great faith, much more faith than I have, okay? And you just said at the end of your diatribe, there are 3 billion base pairs. Ian, do you understand how complicated the DNA code is? You think it happened by chance. Nobody designed this DNA code. 3 billion lines of code, and nobody wrote it. How can't you see the folly of that? I don't know. Donnie, I said I'd give an hour and a half. I got to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning. At least I got audience questions, but I don't think he's given any evidence to make me conclude that this is part of science, that humans should be considered the same as.
It's hard to give evidence when your response is, I don't believe it, because that's exactly what you said. So yes, we do know that only less than 1% of them is functional. We've done the test. Your answer to that is, I don't believe it. Yes, of course I know it. PhDs that have studied this know it. You know that it's not. So please tell me why you don't believe it. If I went and show you papers of it, your question is, I don't believe it, because you know more than them. That is your response to everything.
Okay.
You can't convince you can because you don't believe it. Your answer to that is, I don't believe it, and that's fine, but it's wrong.
If it could be shown, proven scientifically, that there are similar lines of code in apes and chimpanzees and humans, that proves a common designer wrote the code. No, to you it proves a common ancestor. You're an ape. You're seeing good evidence and coming to the wrong conclusion. You don't get it. It's just as much conclusion that there was a common designer of the code.
I know you've done a genetic test before. You've said it before, so we know. So if we use your example around, I think you've mentioned that your ancestors come from Norway or something. Is that right? So we can tell from that because of these genetic elements, right? So we can tell that your ancestors come from Norway because we can look and sample all the people around Norway, and we can compare their ALU elements and line elements with you, and kind of say, well, it's so similar to these people in Norway that your ancestor must have been from Norway. Okay, so do you understand how nested hierarchy works from a very simple concept of shared ancestry? Do you understand what I'm saying here?
And I'd be willing to bet $10 that all the ancestors were human. That does not prove we're related to a sunflower and a snake and a banana.
And this is where you guys go. We are all human. You're not saying anything I don't agree with. Yes, we're all human. But what I'm trying to say is that somewhere in Norway, Kent, and after this, we can agree to disagree, and we can go straight to audience questions or whatever. But somewhere in Norway, a Norwegian village has lost their idiot, and I think, Kent, they should be looking for you. Anyway, so Donnie, we can move to questions and stuff because I don't think Kent's gonna agree. His entire answer has been, I don't believe it. I don't believe the people that are more educated than me that have done the studies. That's been your answer the whole night. So as long as people understand that, Kent, you have not brought any rebuttals to what I'm saying, except I don't believe it, or it's magic. That's the other one I love. It's magic.
Kent, you can have the last word and respond to any of that
No,
if you'd like.
the Bible says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly." So let's get to some audience questions, and I'm going to go to bed. I got to leave at 4:00. Go ahead.
But it's
All
only
right, gentlemen.
12:30. It's only 12:30.
I'm not in Australia.
12:30 for you, Ian.
Yeah, exactly. I
The
was
sun
joking,
is
but yeah,
shining in Australia.
Yeah. The world is round. Okay, it's dark on our side.
that we can agree with 100%.
All right, here we go. Let's get into some questions, gentlemen. Ian and Kent. Time has flown by. Good, engaging discussion. Okay. No debate is complete without a question from Kent, your
Crybaby.
biggest fan, Creationist Crybaby. So here we go. Question for you, Kent. Kent, all the mechanisms for evolution have been observed today. Natural selection, genetic drift, mutations, etc. What is your model for limits to these processes?
Natural selection only selects. I think nature would select the fastest rabbits to survive, more likely to survive, depending on who their predator is. So it's still going to be a rabbit. Natural selection only selects from an existing gene code. If the selecting the fastest rabbits is not going to turn it into a bird, which would be much faster. No, it's still a rabbit. I think all observation would tell us natural selection only selects. It doesn't create anything. Genetic drift, the genetic drift is within well-defined limits. They've got genetic drift. 450 now breeds of cows have been developed, mostly by man, mostly by selectively breeding, and they've taken the genetic code that's already there and they've caused it to drift to give more milk or more beef or stand the heat better or stand the cold better. It's still cow. They found out that, wow, they can't turn it into anything else. Mutations happen, all to my knowledge, are harmful, fatal, or useless. You think a mutation or trillions of mutations are going to turn an amoeba into a human? Show me a beneficial mutation that's adding any information. Crybaby, I've answered this many times. You need to pay attention better. I'm going to write on your report card, does not pay attention in class. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you,
I
Kent.
think the teacher. Sorry, what did you say, Donnie?
Over to you. You can
Oh,
respond.
okay, yeah. Sorry, mate. Sorry. So look, I think the teacher needs to go back to school, okay? Because you did not answer Crybaby's question. His question is, what is your model for the limits of this process? And it's something that we discussed in our second debate, where I said, where we talked about fish limbs moving into, changing into, mammal limbs or human limbs. I said, where is the limit that kind of shows this will not happen? That's what Crybaby is asking. Show me where the limits are. Because basically, can you walk 1,000 miles by taking one step at a time? Evolution says you take one step at a time. You keep on going, you will reach 1,000 miles. But you're saying is there is something there that will stop you at mile 100. What is it, Ken? What will stop you from passing 100 miles? Like, what is it? That you can't answer, and you refuse to answer Crybaby's question.
No, I did. Okay. All observable evidence. Science is what we can observe. We can observe there's variations within the kind of, say, for cows, for example, 450 recognized breeds. We can observe they always make baby cows. There seems to be a limit. Exactly what causes it, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows yet. We could probably come up with some ideas. I don't have to know. We have science is we see it happening. Religion, imagination is, wow, if we went 1,000 miles with this cow, it would come from a bacteria. That's where it's imagination. We know cows produce cows. They always have. We've never seen anything other than that. But you wish to imagine, SpongeBob style, if we could go back millions of years, take the cow 1,000 miles, keep taking little bitty steps, we can go back to a bacteria. You believe a bacteria or protozoa turned into a cow, don't you, Ian?
Yes. Yes, okay, I do. So
you.
You have no answer to the limits, basically. That's it. So it's like saying, I've walked 100 miles. I've videoed that so I can see it, but my video broke and someone videoed me at 1,000 miles. And you're saying because there's no video evidence, in other words, see, between 100 miles and 1,000, it won't happen. The question is, Ken, is you cannot show a limit. You cannot show, when you talk about limits, you can't prove it. I just want people to understand that you're just saying it, but you cannot prove what you're saying.
Well, I cannot prove there's no Santa Claus. I cannot prove there's no reindeer that can fly. I guess I couldn't prove that either, could I?
No, you can't prove negative.
Bingo. Next question, Donnie.
Okay, now we got one for you, Ian. Comes in from Logan Misiak. Thank you for the question, Logan. For you, Ian. Evolution tries to answer the when, where, and how, but can't answer the why. Maybe you can answer the why. Why do we
Well,
exist?
evolution
And
is a science. Sorry, I did read ahead, so that's why. But
yeah,
go on.
Ian, you're getting ahead of yourself. You gotta let me get through
I
these
am.
questions. I know you're excited. I appreciate it. So the last part of it, why do we exist? And what's our ultimate purpose? Thanks. Go ahead, Ian.
So Logan, great movie by the way. I still haven't seen Deadpool 3, but I do. I am quite excited to kind of see Logan come back in Deadpool 3. But yeah, so look, evolution is a science. Basically, what you're asking is philosophy. So I'm not an expert in philosophy. I don't normally kind of think to myself the why. I think about the evidence that shows the how, okay, and the what, because that's what evidence shows. But these metaphorical questions around why something exists, or what is the purpose of life, all that kind of stuff, it's a philosophical question. It's not a question that evolution deals with, and hence it's not a question that at least myself and possibly a lot of scientists actually sit down and think about that. That's a philosophy question.
Thank you, Ian. Kent, any thoughts?
I think you should think about the why, and you should also think about the where. When you die, what happens? Okay, just go back to Stardust. Why? And evolution is not a science. Microevolution is a science. Variations happen within the kind, but that's all we've ever seen. The first five definitions are not science. It's a religious worldview. So I have an answer to that one. I think God designed this world. I think He owns it and He makes the rules, and He designed us to have fellowship with Him. And if you don't want to, that's fine. He won't want you to come to His house either. Then, okay. I want to serve this Lord that made this world. I want to understand Him. I want to understand the why things work. I love teaching. I love biology. I love earth science. I love studying this planet. I have a reason for wanting to study science. I want to give glory to the Creator. When I can study an automobile and see, wow, why did they build it this way? Why did they put this screw and nut and bolt over here? There's a why. Why did they put this extra clay coming out the side of this coffee cup? Wow. So you can hang on to it. Wow. Pretty smart idea. I think that was designed to do that. So I don't have any trouble giving God the glory for His creation. I think that's why.
Thank you, Kent. Ian, you get the last word. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's very simple. I mean, it can be anything. I mean, if when you have no evidence, you can put whatever answer to that question why. So Ken says God did it. Ken says there's an afterlife. Ken cannot prove that there is a God. Ken cannot prove that there is an afterlife. So if you want to just make up crap, Ken, that's fine. Your toilet will be jealous, that's for sure. But you can just say anything you want. If you don't present any evidence of what you say, it's not going to happen. It's not true. So I am evidence based, and I believe that with evidence, that's how you get closer to truth. So until you can provide evidence that there's a God or a heaven, there's no point in me asking a why and saying that it's a God or heaven. Does that make sense? You need to provide evidence to your claim, and you have not.
Okay, Kent, next one's for you. Comes in from Dr. Chris Thompson. Appreciate the question. Question for Hovind. How many cow species are there that descended from the cows that were on the ark?
Well, the word species is a little slippery. There's 26 different definitions of that word species. Okay, I covered that before many times. What exactly is a species? Okay, the definition of species. So I think Noah took 2 cows on the ark, and they have now diversified, many with man's assistance, to give more milk or more beef or something like that. I think the current estimate is there are 450 varieties of cows, but I would say there's still one kind of animal called a cow. And God said they'll bring forth after their kind. He said it 20 times in the first 7 chapters of the Bible. That's all anybody's ever observed. Nobody's ever seen cows produce something other than a cow or come from something that was not a cow. That's what we observe. So that would be the science. As far as how many are descended from the ark, again, the word species is too slippery. There's still only one kind of animal called a cow. Now we've diversified, man has decided to classify them differently with different varieties: milk cows, dairy cows, cattle, beef cows, etc. The cows don't care. They don't care at all. They don't even know we're classifying them. It's purely a man argument over something pretty dumb, I think. The cows know. Our cows up on the North 40, our little zebus, miniature cows, tried so hard to mate with that big cow. They couldn't reach. So the neighbor's bull jumped over the fence, spent the day over here. We're not sure what happened, but she's pregnant now. So I predict it'll be a cow when it comes out. But our goats up there have shown no interest whatsoever in mating with the cow. They're smarter than most evolutionists.
Go ahead, Ian.
Okay. So the Bible does not say that they brought kinds onto the ark. It said sort. Now, when we talked about this, Ken said, well, and he pulled out a modern definition of, what it is, what is a sort and a kind. They're all synonyms. Forgetting that the King James version was written in the 1600s. So maybe pull me a definition of whether those were synonyms back in the 1600s, because that is probably not the case, right? And by the way, Ken, I never talked about species. I was using your definition to kind of prove evolution. And what I kind of said was the Bible itself is my evidence. Using your definitions, the Bible said one kind that was bring forth, which was give birth. And your answer to both of them was it was magic, right? That's what you said. It was magic. And then you ran away when I asked the question about sword and kind. Like I said, your athleticism is really. It's great. Every time I look at you, and I know you're smiling and stuff, and probably thinking, "God, this guy's an idiot." But
Yeah.
I can see the wheel spinning, basically. No, I can see the wheel spinning, but I think the hamster's dead. All right. So, maybe just give a bit of a shake and wake up the hamster. But yeah, no. Good question, Chris. You didn't answer it though.
Ian, you've had plenty of jabs. Let's try and go jab free now for the last 10
Oh,
minutes. Come
you
on,
can't
come
you
on.
can't
It's a
this
jab
is
every
one hand
question, every
this is
comment.
this is debating Kent with one hand tied behind my back. That's I need both hands with him.
Kent, if you want to give Ian a couple jabs back, go ahead. You got my
Go for it.
permission.
No, other than Proverbs, answer not a fool according to his folly. So I better walk away. Go ahead.
Kent, you get the last word to that question if you'd like it.
Well, the question, as I said, the word species has to be defined. There are 26 different definitions of species, including kind and sort. Okay, so exactly what is a species? Let's see. I've covered this many times. A classification of species, it's a big step. This is all man doing it to the animals. The animals don't know we're classifying them. They don't care how we classify them. They know what to mate with. Let them loose in the woods. They'll figure it out. Okay. So 26, that's the current classification of systems. They know what kind, and they don't even know what they look like, but they know what to mate with. Okay. So God said they'll bring forth after their kind, after their kind, after their kind. And God himself in the Bible uses kind and sort interchangeably. Look at this. Bring two of every sort after their kind. Same chapter, wow. 20 times he used kind or sort interchangeably. And so species is a man-made term. And I think probably our biblical definition of kind might be closer in some instances to the family. Maybe all the deer family had a common ancestor. But again, we don't have to know. It doesn't matter. They know what to mate with, okay? There's still no airtight definition of species. In most of the cases, a 5-year-old can tell you what the same kind are. Some kinds are very difficult to classify. Duck-billed platypus, where does that go? Okay. Some people decide to put it into one category. They switch categories all the time. Okay. Our animals are all mingled together, and they don't even know what they look like, but they know what to look for in a mate. So experts will agree. Peer-reviewed journals will publish. There are some animals that are hard to classify. There you go. There are 26 different definitions. Why is it so difficult to classify them? Let's see. Right here, I got the quote from the peer-reviewed journal. Okay, so I'm saying there are 26 different definitions of species, and nobody knows for sure exactly what a species is, but the animals seem to know. So I don't think we need to worry about it. Let them sort it out.
All right. Thank you for the responses, gentlemen. Next one is for you, Ian. Super chat from Vans 182 Workshop. $5. Appreciate the support. Question for Ian. Did the original protozoa keep producing protozoa, or did it slowly break the law of monophyly? Go ahead, Ian.
So is Van saying that if a protozoa evolves multicellular and then that changes to, let's say, a fish, is he saying that that breaks the law of monophyly? Because that does not break the law of monophyly. It is always a protozoa. It's like we are always a vertebrate. The very first animal that basically got a backbone, a vertebrate, right? We are always that. I mean, that animal can then evolve, from sea creature, fish to amphibian, to different mammals, etc. But we are still always a vertebrate. We never break the law of monophyly. So I don't think he understands what he's saying. We never break. We never break this. We are always our ancestor. We could look very different from where we are today compared to the past, but we are always that ancestor. And yes, Ken, that means that I'm an ape. I am an animal,
I agree.
and I'm still better than you.
Ooh. Okay, quick question.
Big call.
Ian, do protozoa have backbones? Are they vertebrate?
No, but they evolved to be one.
So they did break the law of monophyly,
Hmm.
didn't
How?
they? I don't know. You're the one who believes they did. I think this whole chart's stupid.
Are
You're the one,
you a vertebrate? Are you a vertebrate?
you're missing our
Do
protozoa.
you have a backbone?
I
Your
do.
first ancestor that got the backbone, you still have the backbone. Are you a vertebrate or not? Are
You're
you a
missing.
mammal?
You're
No, you're
avoiding
missing
the
the point.
question. You're
You are
avoiding it
you are
completely.
no, you
Look
are
at
thinking that
look
just
at the
because we
question,
have two different names, we're saying it's
Van.
two different.
Van. A simple question: do protozoa have a backbone? Are they vertebrate? Yes or no?
Well, you're obviously reading into this question more than what I am.
No,
His
no,
question
no.
is, does it break the law of monophyly? And I'll get to that. Does it break the law of monophyly? I said, no, it doesn't, because it will always be a protozoa. And I said, a protozoa will evolve to a creature that will have a vertebrae, a backbone, and
So it did
every
break a
other
law.
creature, including how?
It got a backbone somewhere.
Yeah, but
Protozoa don't have a
so
backbone.
you're thinking this evolved into an animal with a backbone, and then suddenly magically they're specially created. That's what you say. Whereas
No,
you're not thinking this
this,
vertebrae is nested under this protozoa. I don't think you understand phylogeny. I don't think you understand
oh,
the law of monophyly. I don't.
Ian,
You're saying stuff that doesn't make sense. You never break that law,
Donna,
right? You are a vertebrae.
Donna,
So is a rabbit.
put the question back up, Donnie.
There we go.
Did protozoa keep producing protozoa, or did it slowly break the law of monophyly? Vance, it didn't change at all. The protozoa did not ever grow a backbone. Protozoa don't have a backbone, and Ian is completely avoiding the question. He's running because he doesn't have a common sense in his head to understand. He just got slammed. Protozoa don't have a backbone, but he believes they somehow got one. So yes, he believes
A
they broke the law
protozoa
of
does not
monophyly.
have a backbone, but it's a common ancestor of an animal that eventually had a backbone. That common ancestor with a backbone will never lose its ancestry with that protozoa. It's as if that common ancestor with a backbone eventually evolved into you, Ken, but that means that you are still a vertebrate. You may not
You're
agree
missing.
with that, but you are still a vertebrate. You never lose that law of monophyly. You will always be that. You look nothing like a protozoa, nor do you look anything like a very simple animal, maybe a fish with a vertebrate, but you are a vertebrate. That's what the law of monophyly means. What you're saying makes no sense at all.
I think everybody in the audience sees how stupid this is going here. Ian, protozoa don't have backbones. They had to break the law of monophyly. Donnie, I'm done. I got to go. I got a couple hours sleep and a long drive. So let's do it again another time if you want.
See you later, Kent.
A round 4 between Ian Chen and
Uh,
Ken Hovind. I don't know if I can handle it. I don't know. It's
I don't know if Kent will be able to hear me. I'll have to shout because he'll be so far in the horizon with all the running he's doing. I'll have to yell, Kent, come back. Stop running.
You
But
never
yeah,
answered.
maybe if he
You never
stops
answered the
fast
question.
enough, then yes.
You never answered the last question. Did protozoa break the law of monophyly?
No,
Yes, they
because
did. They did. They got a backbone. Ian, go back and listen. I got to quit. Donnie, thank
okay,
you so
gentlemen.
much. Ian, come visit America. We'll give you a tour of
see
our
you,
place.
Kent.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, appreciate the debate. And all right, to the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for the super chats, the questions, the engagement. Tons of fun. And definitely, like the other two debates, a little more lively, but thought provoking, engaging, entertaining, certainly not boring at all. That completes the Chen versus Hovind debate trilogy. And it sounds like we may get another trilogy at some point in the future. So hope everybody enjoyed it. Thank you for the questions that came in. Of course, questions always add to the debate, gives the debaters the opportunity to elaborate on some of the points, go a little deeper into the arguments that were made during the main portion of the debate itself. And so, okay, just to let everybody know, we will be back here tomorrow for another creation versus evolution related debate. This one is going to be between, if I can find it here, we got the thumbnail for everybody. We got Curious Christianity and, excuse me, Apollo Jedi. Does the Bible teach animal death prior to the fall? So we got lots to enjoy in the world of creation versus evolution. And so again, we got this one tomorrow. Next week, coming up quick, we've got the battle continues between Wade the Wizard and Dr. Dino. Over the next month or two, we've got several more. We got Kent and Grayson, the 6 stages of evolution. So that should be fun. We're going to be having Kent and Grayson specifically engage each of those stages: cosmic, chemical, planetary and stellar, organic, macro, and microevolution. So that should be fun. I think it'll be edifying for the audience to see a debate where we have different segments dedicated to each one of those stages, which means it'll be a comprehensive debate. It'll be focused on many different topics and points, really. So, okay, some more that we have in the world of creation evolution. We have just a ton of debates on a variety of topics: soteriology, eschatology, nature of God, creation, evolution, all things science. So I'm just giving you a sneak preview into the creation evolution debates that we have coming up for everybody. So we got this one here: Adam from Curious Christianity, Kent Hovind, Young Earth creation versus Old Earth creation. So this one will be next month. We should also be continuing our open mic series on creation versus evolution. So stay tuned for that one. On Saturday, we were supposed to have this debate between Pastor Jeff Dollar and Charles Jennings on soteriology. One of the debaters had to reschedule, but we have rescheduled it. And so what we'll be doing on Saturday instead will probably be the continuation of our soteriology panel debate series. And so we did one a couple weeks ago on Romans 8. And so Saturday we'll probably do one on John 15 or 2 Peter 2:20. So stay tuned for that. We'll be doing something on Saturday. And that'll probably be what we're doing. So a big one coming up in December 16th. Really pumped for this one. Dr. Fuzz Rana, Dr. Robertson Jenis. What is the age of the earth? Old Earth creation versus Young Earth creation. 2 seasoned debaters, true professionals, very knowledgeable on these topics. So it should be an excellent debate. We're going to be focusing on the scriptures, but also the science a little bit. So it's going to be a debate that encompasses everything to do with the age of the earth. Alex G, appreciate that, brother. And okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up there. And so lots to look forward to. That's just a sneak preview. So if you're not yet subscribed, do make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Certainly does help the algorithm. Appreciate all the feedback and comments. We did get a super chat here. RoboJut, appreciate it. $20 super chat. Really appreciate the support. And RoboJut says, over the years I have watched you. You have provided a way for me to learn so much more about true Christianity. Thank you for providing a safe place to get amazing biblical content and defending the faith. Well, praise the Lord. That's awesome. Appreciate the support for the ministry and our continued efforts. So with that, we're going to wrap things up and call it a night. Again, common descent clash, Kent versus Ian. And okay, God bless all. Stand for truth is all.